Good afternoon, Your Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, our gracious host, Your Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros and the AU Chairperson, Your Excellencies, Heads of State, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud to chair the all-party parliamentary group for African reparations in the Parliament of the United Kingdom. We are 14 members of Parliament from all political parties calling for policy on reparations in a country commonly known as the Mother of Empire. We say that reparative justice cannot be financial alone, so we work across three different strands. We insist that there must be a form of community reparations, and that begins with an apology, recognizing that peoples of African descent are equals. That goes to look at things such as environmental reparations, health reparations, educational reparations, and we look also to restitution of artifacts and archives, because we believe that finders keepers has never been a plausible argument, and that theft is theft, and that reparations should begin with the return of the loot of empire. We also look at the decolonization of aid and international structures, because we see some of these as a form of neo-colonialism. Many of our aid organizations now are private bodies, and the fact of the matter is, unless they are working quite specifically to end dependency on aid, they are simply part of the problem, because the aid sector has become a sector, just that. And the reality is that with all sectors, thank you. And the reality is that with all sectors, they require supply and demand, and that means keeping people in Africa and the Caribbean subject and continually in poverty. And it's no small feat that we all meet here 30 years after the Abuja Declaration, a Pan-Africanist conference that accepted our common struggle as peoples of African descent. And it's important that we continue to stand in that unity. It is important that we dispel the lies that as people, we should be pleased with the progress that we have made. You hear various things called towards the fact that we once had a black American president, and that we should be pleased because we have more black billionaires. Yet right across the world, people that look like us continue to starve and suffer, and this is not by accident, but by design. All of our oppressions are a direct result of these historical injustices, and we need to accept the fact that we are not free until we are all free. Now, I'm here because my country has a moral duty to make amends for the trafficking, enslavement, and colonization and continued exploitation and degradation of peoples of African descent. Whilst we could never fully recompense for the harm that is done, if we do not start to make amends, we are simply continuing one of the greatest crimes in human history. Now, we are often told that slavery was 400 years ago, so why are we continuing to speak about it today and continuing to berate people for it today? But we have to remember that this is not when slavery ended. And when slavery ended, the whips and the metal shackles were replaced with other constraints. They were replaced with colonialism, neo-colonialism, a UN Security Council which continuously ignores the views of other African nations, crippling debts, IMF, punitive and exploitative trade, the continued theft and disregard, institutional racism and poverty. I could go on. And when I call for reparations, I'm often asked to be grateful that my country, Britain, ended the slave trade. But what many people do not know is that in order to end the slave trade, the UK took out the largest loan in its history. And this particular loan we did not pay off until 2015. This means that I, the descendant of enslaved peoples taken to Brazil and the Caribbean, and the descendant of colonized peoples of Ghana through taxation myself, paid towards the slave owners and not the enslaved. So, the united front that we speak of today should include the diaspora, and I would remind those who are representing Commonwealth nations here today that citizens of your countries studying, working or living in the UK currently have the right to vote in UK general elections. They could be instrumental in shaping the policy that we hope to create, and we hope that when the time comes we are able to call on them to push their elected representatives. Other than moral arguments for reparations, I often have to make those to my colleagues at home that do not accept the moral arguments. I have to make economic ones to them. I have to show them that African Caribbean countries are continuously rising, that global power structures are shifting, African economies are rising not because of anything that the West has given them, but because of in spite of what it has done to them. And a few years ago, my country committed what I call a monumental act of self-harm. We underwent Brexit. And meanwhile, whilst we left our largest trading partner, we see the economies in Africa and Caribbean strengthening their links. Now, Rule Britannia no longer rules the waves, and whilst we in my country will never be slaves, we have to understand that nobody else is going to be a slave again either. And in our increasingly globalized world, we need friends, and true friends can only be brought out of equality. And we cannot reach that equality until we repair the harm that is done. So when people say to me that it is radical to ask for reparations, I say to them it was once radical in my country that a woman could even vote, that a black person could even be a member of parliament. Yet here I am, and I can speak from the same building on those green benches that once decreed that people that look like me and you would be owned as chattel, and I can call for reparative justice. So the struggles of today are actually just a mark of our progress tomorrow. But above all, at this conference, I'm here to listen and learn. And whilst I am a daughter of Ghana, I am a British politician. The policy on reparations will be made in parliaments like mine, but I do not believe that Western countries should be dictating how and what is given in reparations. The injustice must stop now, and that means that reparations must be carried out on the terms of those who are most impacted. So it's very, very important, the meetings that you have today and the discussions that you have, because that is the only way that reparative justice can be true. And I'm often asked, when does reparative justice stop, or when do reparations stop? And I say that they stop when their repair is done. There are many different ways in which we can go about repair, and that repair will not end until we have the equality and the equity that peoples of African descent that have been denied for a millennia. Thank you very much for your attention.